Hello, and welcome to Property Matters, a weekly look at all matters property designed to be of interest to anyone who has an interest in property. And Property Matters is supported by Fairview International Property Consultancy and auctionproperty.co.uk. As you know, each week we talk through those big property stories of the week, and we love you to get involved in the chat wherever you can, wherever you're watching us and enjoying the show today. And of course, don't forget to like the page and subscribe for notifications of when we're live. And Property Matters, of course, is now available, I'm pleased to say, as a podcast and available to stream or download every Monday from 10 a.m. Simply type in Property Matters TV into your favourite podcast application and you'll find us there. We also like to welcome those people who enjoy the show on the catch-up via the email or social media during the week. Obviously, if you're watching on catch-up, we're not exactly live, so you can't comment on the programme. But if you're live now with us, then please get involved. So let's catch up with our property expert, Joe Joshi, who's got some big news for us today.
Yes, good morning. Good morning, everybody. The big news, of course, is that we have our website, which is now live. And I know that all those that are on my WhatsApp group have been bombarded with that all morning from about 6 o'clock this morning. So I know that, you've got it.
Oh. Joe's internet doesn't seem to be as good this morning. Let's just see if we can... Joe, are you back?
I'm here.
Yeah, okay. Well, you suddenly froze for a moment there, so we didn't... Oh, we've now lost his camera. Well, let me just... while he's just dialing back in, let me just tell you the news this morning. It's going to be one of those mornings, clearly. We've got our brand new website, which we've just launched, which is propertymatterstv.co.uk. And as you can see on the front page, you can see the latest episode. And then when you go through to previous episodes, you can see all of our programs listed there, right back to September of last year. So you can binge watch all of our programs on the website. So here you can see the website. And also we've got the podcast page, so you can pick up the podcast live as well. There's that. And then also there's a contact us there and an about us page as well. A little bit about Joe and myself. And then finally you've got the info, the email address rather, which is hello@propertymatterstv.co.uk. So let's just get Joe back in. Joe, I had to steal your thunder there, sorry, just whilst you came back on, and I don't know how we lost you there, but yes, it's great to have a new website, isn't it?
You've been trying to lose me for a while, actually, Paul, I know that, but, I'm here like a bad penny week in, week out, so...
Yeah, we're not going to get rid of you that easily, are we? No.
Yeah, no, it's not going to happen that easily. You could, as they say, you can run, but you can't hide. So that's the way it's going to be. No, great news on the website. Look, I mean, the website has been put together based on the demand that we've had, the interest. Obviously, I'd really appreciate feedback. Any information that you can give us, or any information that you'd like us to discuss on this, and subjects that you'd like us to bring to the forefront. You know, this whole thing about Property Matters started off purely because that's my favorite subject. I know that 99.9% of you out there, it's also your favorite subject. We try and deal with it in layman's terms so that we all understand all the gibberish stuff that comes out throughout each week. Paul brings it to the front, and then he tests me every Sunday. So it's like a test every Sunday for me to see whether I'm up to speed on what I'm doing. But so far, so good. So he continues to try. But, you know, just as a backup, we also bring in experts. And of course, we have today joining us, and we've got him out of bed a bit earlier today than he normally likes to be, is Bob Singh, Chess Mortgages. Bob, a bit like me, you know, it's just the only difference between me and Bob at this moment, he doesn't shave, so his grey is showing quite nicely and mine is not, so we're okay with that. But we're avid and long-term in the property. Bob, financial services, as long as I can think back. Anything that is necessary to be known about financial services, you can contact Bob either through Property Matters, or of course you can get him directly at Chess Mortgages. And Bob is available to help and assist. Our whole look, here we go.
42 years.
Yeah, that's all right. We're in the same numbers there. Same numbers. It's just that I saw Guy Charrison also this week saying, yeah, he was 42 years. So, you got a lot of years worth of experience there, week in, week out, to share with that within the property world. So, a packed program, I'm sure, which we've got, and Paul's raring to go. So far away.
Yes, welcome, Bob. Sorry, your sound was off there because we've got a quite noisy line for you for some reason, but it'll be okay. We can hear you now.
Good morning, guys, and good morning to everyone tuning in today. Yeah, good news about the website. I haven't tuned in yet. I will check it out later, but that's fantastic news.
Yeah, you can hear yourself back on the podcast later.
Yes. I hate my own voice. I don't know why. I hate my own voice.
Okay, so the big question everybody's been asking for a while now: when is the best time to get into buy to let? And obviously, we know that savers have been getting poor returns for a long time, so people have always turned to property as a means of supplementing their income, and that, of course, has been supported by having low mortgage rates. So it's not necessarily those who've got the cash to buy outright. People have been enjoying low mortgage rates, so they can still buy a second property and afford the repayments. And there's always been solid demand from tenants and, of course, stable yields. But we've seen and we've discussed on this programme, Joe and I, many times about the fact that the government seems to be wanting to tax and to have punitive charges put onto landlords. And it almost seems to me that they want to discourage casual landlords, like the person who maybe wants one or two properties just to fund a retirement or something. They really only want to support those that do it as a proper sized business. So the question is, with all the regulatory changes, and we've heard all the news and all the stats about landlords are selling up and moving out because there's just no money in it anymore. So should this be the time that we're investing in buy to let? Let me start off by welcoming Bob and asking Bob for his views on that.
I think property is always a long-term play. It's never 1 or 2 years, and you've got to understand that property movements are cyclical. So prices will go down, they will go back up, and as they always have done, even after the previous recession. So I think if you're looking at the property investment, it has to be long-term, and there's never a right time or a wrong time. Yes, you have to obviously pay attention to the economy and sort of time it as best as you can. But if it's your desire to enter the buy-to-let market, then there's no wrong time, to be honest. It's more of, can you enter the buy-to-let market, because it's not quite straightforward, as we all know. Deposits of 25% are required. You've got bank arrangement fees, you've got stamp duty to tackle with, and not only that, you've got approximately 180 pieces of legislation that you have to really follow to be sort of fully compliant. And that's why most people employ a letting agent to do it for them. But I think the bigger problem is the economy right now. I think the next 18 months, 2 years are going to be a bit hairy. So maybe one ought to wait and watch. The buy-to-let mortgage rates have risen. So anybody, for example, borrowing in London, where the yields are typically low, may not really see a great return in the short term. And I think the market will push northwards into the Midlands and Northeast, Northwest, because the yields are better. And even if you are paying 3-4% on the buy-to-let, at least you'll see a positive return from those areas. But I think you just take advice. I think, but the good news is you don't have to be a homeowner to enter that buy-to-let market. If you really want to do so, you can do so as a first-time buyer, landlord. And there are now schemes for that category of people who maybe still live with their parents but want to enter that market. So I think it's a market it's here to stay. It's not going to disappear. I think property is a favorite hobby of many people, to buy and to let out or develop or whatever. So I think it's going to stay around for a long time.
Joe, do you agree with that? Is it time to wait or time to buy?
Well, from my point of view, I don't think there's ever a time to wait. I mean, Bob was saying 42 years in the business, and I just go back and do the same point and say 42 years ago, the first house I sold was for 34,950 in Hayes. The same house, a similar house, £700,000. I think the message is in the song there, really, that people will continue to invest and buy, irrespective of all the things that are thrown at them. Several things. It is the safest form of investment that you can. You can touch it, feel it, and see it. And yes, there might be times when it hasn't actually increased in value, but it will eventually come back to do that. The government, I feel it really, any government, not this particular government, any successive government has been at fault. They've been at fault because they have not come up with an alternative for people to consider investment in. It's really as simple as that. If they came up with an alternative, they may find that they will reduce the number of people that will actually jump on the property ladder, especially at a certain age, at a certain time, when you don't particularly want the hassle of the leaky tap and situation. You just want to be able to enjoy your retirement, enjoy your investments. So if you've got a couple of £100,000, £300,000-400,000 that you've either inherited or accumulated or done something with or come out of a pension, that money could be invested in something that would give them a long-term investment without having to actually go into the property market. And I've just always felt that no successive government has come back with an alternative that gives people to say, okay, I'll do that. So even the one or two people that actually buy a property to supplement their income or have a better return on their money, if it's sitting in a building society or a bank where they're not actually giving the best return, they feel compelled to go and buy something so that they can actually, at least receive a higher return. Obviously, what they don't bear in mind is the actual running cost, because it is annoying that there are things that you get, and some could be a really smooth, easy let. You might find that you've got a tenant and you're in there for the next 2 years and you never hear from the tenant. The money just falls in, month out into your account. And then the other side could be that you could have nothing but a nuisance tenant. And you could spend, whatever potential profit you're going to make back in the property because you've got a complacent tenant who's always got a leaky tap or something's going wrong. And before you know it, you always begin to think, I wonder why I did this. So it's a real hard choice to make. But unfortunately, because there is no other alternative, it leaves very few people to say, well, actually, you know what, I'm going to do something different. And I've sseen people, I'm sure Bob through financial services would probably see this more than I would do, but I see people come to me and say to me, I've got some money, I don't particularly want to buy to let, but I've got no choice because I'm not earning a great deal of interest on the money. And if it isn't, it's going to dwindle away because I'm going to spend it, or I'm going to give it to the kids, or I'm going to do something else with it. And then I've got nothing to show for it. So the best thing I can do is maybe go and buy something, and my money's locked in. At least I know that I'm getting a return. And if I'm not getting a return, at least I'm going to get a capital return maybe in 2, 3, 4 years' time, which means that it might have increased in price and I could refinance it, take some of that money out, maybe help my kids and so forth. So property is number one, without a shadow of a doubt. When's it the right time? There's never a right time. Now is the right time. If you ever sit there waiting for the people saying, oh, well, I'll wait for another 2 years because house prices may go down, something else will happen. But in the United Kingdom, it has been shown for as 42 years that I've been in the business that it goes into neutral or into drive. Very rarely have we had a reverse gear into the property market.
It's interesting that they're saying, Chesterton's have done some research on this, and they're saying that they've noticed an increase, for example, of 50% in property sales for buy-to-let in the central London areas, so places like South Kensington. But they've also noticed an increase of 20% in places like Wapping and Tower Bridge and places like that. But they're saying that because the average monthly rent now in London is at £1,698 per month, that's a 15.7% increase in the last year. And I guess that's because so many people are coming back into the capital to work and therefore need to rent again, because they've been working from home. So suddenly there's a demand for rental property in London. There's a shortage of property in London, and that's pushed the prices up. And obviously, those that are looking to buy to let are seeing a good increase there. So Bob, that seems to be driving it. What's your view on that? Do you still think it's worth waiting? Oh, hang on, sorry.
I think the London, well, don't wait too long. I think because what's happening is inflation is nearing 10%. So money in the bank is actually depreciating. And it's not just in the UK, it's all over the world. France, America, inflation is rampant. So people know that money in a bank account is dead money. It's not going to be yielding like 0.1%. Whereas still in a property, you've got a chance to get an income and capital appreciation over the medium long term. So it's no surprise that people piling back into London to buy these buy-to-lets because their money in the bank is dead. It's not doing anything. So property is the best long-term investment, along with gold, of course, without really too much of a risk. It's tangible. It's always, it's there. You might not want to sell it if the prices are down, but you can always hold on to it. And if prices go up, as Joe said, you can release your money out and then use that for other purposes. It's the best way to save long term because trying to save from an income is damn hard. You've got rising bills, energy bills, gas, electric, fuel. Property is there as a safety net for the long term.
So here's a question to both of you, and I'll go first. But if you did, let's just say you had 600,000 to buy something on a buy-to-let, or you could get a funding for that, would you buy something in London, smaller, maybe on a leasehold or something like that? Or would you go out of town, maybe go north and buy something significant like a 4 or 5 bedroom house and rent that? What would be your view, Joe?
But if I had that kind of money, I would actually be spreading my bets quite nicely, because as Bob has said earlier, that even you don't have to be a home owner to be able to do a buy-to-let program. So if you had a 25% deposit on a property, and out of £600,000, you could get yourself a tremendous portfolio spread throughout, with a choice perhaps of 1 or 2 in London, but perhaps a little bit further afield where the returns may actually be much, much better. So even if the returns on the ones in London may not give you a monthly increase, but the ones in London will give you a long-term capital return, and the ones in the outer areas will give you the running cost. So imagine if you're getting a 10% return on your investment in I don't know, Birmingham, Coventry, wherever the other areas might be that you might decide to do, that will almost pay for the London property to a large extent, and it'd be a good balance. So my suggestion would be to speak to someone like Bob and say, I've got £500,000-600,000. How many buy-to-lets can I have, and where can I go and buy them? And then come back to me, and I'll tell them where they can go there. But I wouldn't be looking to do one. I'd be looking to do quite a portfolio at that sort of level. But that is at the higher end, Paul. I mean, and there are a lot of people that do have that, either through inheritance or through their own savings or through the sale of property. Some people have downsized. When you go back to the pandemic period, a lot of people took the advantage of downsizing and sort of cashing out, and they've got that money sitting on an account. But as Bob says, look at the interest return they're getting is nothing. So what they're going to do is they're going to go back into property, perhaps in an area where they've moved to, and find that they could actually probably buy 2, 3, or 4 properties and return to the rental market. And the demand for rental market at the moment, as you can see from the stats that we're discussing today, is increasing.
Bob, how would you divide up your 600 grand?
I would have a damn good time in Vegas, but I don't think the wife would agree with that. But I would firstly take tax advice, and I would then decide if I'm really an expert at investing or whether it's my first time. So I think, as Joe said, it's good to diversify geographically, and it's also good to choose different types of property as well. So I think it depends where you are on the journey. If you're a first timer, I think I'd probably look at a multi-unit block, maybe 5 or 6 flats in the Midlands somewhere where it's easy to control, easy to manage, and all depends on how much time you've got to look after these properties. So it depends, So if you like, a particular area and there's a strong demand, maybe because of universities, there's nothing wrong with that. Or where there are large employers around, major industries. But I think you just got to do your research and see, because it wouldn't be really wise to buy one in East Anglia, one in Scotland, one in Wales. It's all over the place here. I think you've got to pick up maybe a region and maybe invest in that region that you like.
On the region, yeah. Interesting. Paragon Bank have said that they've reported increased buy-to-let lending of 19.5% during the first half of this financial year, with strong demand from portfolio landlords. So it's a clear sign that people are getting into buy-to-let right now, despite the the headwinds, if you want to call it that. They completed £854.6 million worth of buy-to-let loans in the 6 months to the 31st of March, 98.2% of which were classed as specialist buy-to-let. And they've also seen a strong increase in green mortgages, which I know is something we've talked to you, Bob, about before, but seeing a lot of people who are getting really good pricing as an incentive on energy efficient properties. So they did a total of £353 million worth of lending on properties with an EPC of between A and C, which is up 38% on the year. So people are moving forward with that because they're seeing benefits, presumably in the lending for a good quality property.
That's right. Yeah, I mean, obviously, very shortly it will become law, so every property will have to be A to C if it's for letting. But for now, yeah, lenders are incentivizing customers who are, buying ABC properties with a fractional discount on the rate. So overall, it contributes towards your costs to make it ABC. So it's a good idea. It's a good incentive, and as you've clearly proven there, there's a good take up on it as well.
And Joe, do you want me flights to Vegas before we go, or shall I leave that to you?
No way, mate. I don't share.
No, I think Vegas is a good idea. Definitely. You've got let a bit of steam off and then come back and settle down, because once you've actually got that portfolio, you probably won't be going in a hurry again. So you might as well get that out of the way first. And especially as Bob says, if people buy from one extreme to the other, they'll be spending half their life just traveling between them. So Vegas will definitely not be on the cards. And talking about that particular timing issue, I've always recommended that 45 minutes is a maximum. Now, 45-minute driving distance to a property is the maximum period I recommend that you should consider ever. Now, people are going to say that's why 45 minutes, why can't it be an hour? But the funny thing is, the hour becomes a day, and 45 minutes is actually only half a day. And so you've got to sort of balance that. The only comparison I can give you on that, so that people can understand, is that if you do a school run in the morning and you actually leave at 8 o'clock, the chances are you're going to get your kid to the school at the right time, or maybe a bit earlier. But at 8:15, the whole world leaves at the same time, and that's when the traffic jams happen. And it's the same scenario that if you actually take a property and you go just that 1 hour journey, all of a sudden you're going to find that it's a day return. And that you've got to put a time and value on you've got to put a value on your time, and also where those properties are going to be. So it's good to actually have a buy-to-let portfolio within 45 minutes from your base where you are living as a maximum time, because that means that if something does go wrong, or you need to get a plumber out, or you need to go and fix something, or you need to do something to that property, you are able to do that in half a day. Than it is to spend the whole day. Because at the end of the day, if you spend all of that time traveling, you're taking your profit out by that traveling and the cost that it's going to cost you for the return. So it's quite important to sort of time it in that sense. And yes, a block is quite a good idea if you can get a hold of a block, because it means it's easily managed in one spot. But if that isn't available, then yes, try and make sure that it's within a short distance so that you can manage the property.
Okay, let's move on. And one of the reasons why we're really glad that Bob is with us today, and that is for the rise of two specific mortgage products. Now, I've not heard of these until recently, TIO and RIO. So that's term interest only mortgages and retirement interest only mortgages. And these are increasingly being taken out by older people who presumably have issues with their own personal financing. Is that a fair assumption, Bob? Do you want to take us through it?
Yeah, I mean, TIOs are term interest only mortgages, and RIOs are retirement interest only mortgages. Both are assessed on affordability. Now, TIOs are the old mortgages where people took interest only mortgages and didn't really plan for the day when they have to pay it back. So those people who took out mortgages, 20, 25 years ago, are probably coming to the end of their term now, and wondering what the hell to do, because the banks have written to them saying they want all their money back in one go. But don't panic, there are solutions. And interest only was automatic back in the day. You didn't really have to ask for interest only. Even at 90% lending, you got an interest only mortgage. But these days, lenders have become a little bit wiser because after the mortgage market review in 2014, the FCA pretty much clamped down on interest-only mortgages at that time. And it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that lenders have started to release interest-only products, but only for a certain class of borrower. So that borrower is now either with somebody with a decent sized deposit. So there's already a significant amount of equity from day one. And that equity varies in quantum, but it's usually enough to buy a 2-bedroom flat in the same area that you're buying your house in. So, like in West London, that equity requirement might be 300,000, and then yes, you can have an interest-only mortgage. So that if you don't pay it back, at least you can sell the house and buy a 2-bedroom apartment to move in at the end of the term. So, and the other criteria is high income. It's not generally available to people like me, not earning a lot of money. It's generally for people earning 75k, 100k plus, so that they know that class of borrower is going to have lots of cash switching around, so they'll probably be able to make lump sum repayments to their mortgage debt and bring it down over that period. So, but interest only serves a purpose. Even my mortgage to this day is interest only. So, and I've done well throughout my 25-year journey with interest-only mortgages. So, but they have to be handled with a bit of care, a bit of foresight. You've got to have a plan, and there's only one plan, which is to pay it off. So you've either got to build up assets in the background, build up investments, or have a business that you might sell in 25 years' time to pay the residential mortgage off. So they are still in use, but the qualification criteria is a little bit stiffer now. And if you're coming to the end and you've not really planned, you have no other assets, and you're coming to sort of retirement, then the retirement interest only mortgage could replace the TIO mortgage. But retirement interest only mortgages are available to people over the age of 55, and there is an income affordability assessment. So you must have some sort of income, either through your pension or your business, to sustain that interest-only mortgage or the retirement interest-only mortgage for your living days, because it's generally no term to that mortgage. You'll be there. You'll be there until you pass away, or if it's a couple, until the second partner passes away. And if that option isn't there, if you have no income at all, then yes, you've either got to sell, which is sad because you'll have a lot of memories from that house. You probably will have raised all your children there, spent happy times, and you may not want to sell. So the final solution, or the solution of last resort, is the equity release mortgage. So if you're coming to the end of your mortgage term and you have no options, then there is a solution. You can take a lifetime mortgage, which involves no underwriting. It can be interest only. It's usually a very long-term fixed rate. And these days, equity release mortgages aren't the old nasty products that we saw 20, 30 years ago. They're now pretty much mainstream, to be honest with you. They're very flexible. You can overpay so that compound interest doesn't accrue too rapidly. You can stop making the payments if you don't want to. So again, it's designed for that market where there's uncertainty of income or lack of income, but there's lots of equity. So equity release mortgages are typically based on the equity in the house, and they rarely exceed 55% loan to value. They start off for younger people at around 25%, and they gradually creep their way up to 55 if you're older, as say 70, 80. And health plays a big part in how much the bank gives you on day one. So if you're a fit 80-year-old like Paul McCartney, you may not get the full 55%, because they know that you might live to 100 and you've got 20 years of compound interest to deal with, so the bank doesn't want to be left out of pocket. And the good schemes these days also have a negative, so no negative equities or a guarantee as well. So you'll never owe more than the value of your home as well. So your beneficiaries are sort of comfortable that they're not going to be left with a big debt after their parents pass away. So, but they're useful products. Every interest-only mortgage has a place, but it was misused. It was probably missold or not explained properly back in the day. So we do see a lot of cases where mortgages are coming to the end. Parents haven't got the income to, extend it with another borrower, and they have to bring on their children into the arrangement, which they may or may not want to do. So, if you're in that predicament, then get in touch with a good financial advisor or a broker to have those explained to you and choose the best option for you.
There's been a 26% increase in the RIOs. They've only been approved since 2018 by the FCA, from what I'm reading here. But what they're saying is interesting is that you can have a set term, but there is an option for fixed for life, which they refer to as the longest fixed rate in the UK mortgage market.
Yeah, lots of options open. Yeah, I mean, those are from specialist lenders who operate in that market space. The standard lenders don't offer lifetime fixed for affordability-based models just yet. But if you lock into a rate for that period of time, then if you exit early, there's going to be huge penalties because these are money market-backed instruments that they take out to give you the money. So if you break that contract, it can get very expensive. So take advice.
Yeah. And Joe, Bob's right there. He's saying that basically, interest only, you've got to really treat it very carefully and have a plan.
Yeah, I mean, 20, 25 years ago, it was all the rage. There was nothing else there, and repayments were just out of reach. It was the other way around, and now repayments are probably a little bit more in reach because that's one of the only way that people can clear up. But the biggest concern, of course, has been that there has been no other instrument to be able to deal with that. I mean, the only thing that there was endowments, and they fell off the edge probably 20, 25 years ago. And so there is that market. Of course, they realize that, and that's where the RIO comes into it, because they know there's going to be, as Bob says, family homes, people that have been in those homes for all that period, and all of a sudden, the bank may turn around and say, well, we need that back. And so they've got other options now, and that's, I think, to a lot of people, that's excellent news. Because there are people that have had those homes, and some of them had to, and we saw that, Paul, in the lockdown period where the market was going crazy, where people thought, well, this is my window of opportunity now. I don't need to work from my office. I can actually work from home, any part of the country, sell high, buy cheap, release, and cleared their mortgages as quickly as they could. But now some sort of normality is coming in. It's hard for those that are now, especially the next generation, to start to think that they want to be remote, because it's not just about the costing, it's also about life. And for them, they want to enjoy the bright lights of the city, whatever city they might be in, whether it's Birmingham or London, and they want to turn around and have that whole package where they can be in the town, which is why when you look at the statistics that are going out at the moment, the London market is coming back in. We always knew it would, because at times it's not just a local, a domestic market that we look at. It's also an international market when international students, international business people start to come back in. And we also know that when there are crises elsewhere in the world, those people tend to flock to safe, secure, and good return environments like London and like the UK. So I don't ever see that there will be any reason for people not to do that. But I think to see these products coming in is only good for people's mindsets and gives them the comfort to say that there is an alternative. And they should, of course, speak to their financial advisor or take advice from Bob and his team and discuss that, because I think it's nice to see that there is now other alternative opportunities that are being presented. And equity release is a great thing. I don't think it's something that, from a cultural point of view, people have taken on board, because it's not something that we kind of begin to understand. But I think there's a huge market within communities to understand that they can stay where they are, they can release themselves, and they can have the full benefit of that. I think I've not seen that marketed anywhere, Bob, directly, and I think that's a great product that should be marketed.
Yeah, the important thing to remember is if you are coming to the end of your term and you've had a few letters from the bank and you've not done anything, is not to panic. The bank doesn't take the house from you the day after your mortgage ends. It does give you time. So as long as you communicate with the bank and say you are taking advice, you do want to deal with that responsibility, the banks will be very, very understanding. They have to be under the treat your customers fairly regime or the doctrine. Somebody aged 50, 60, 65 is classed as a vulnerable customer by the FCA. So the banks can't bulldozer you out your house and take you to the court without really listening to what your strategy is. I've seen cases where we've negotiated with the banks to extend that term for a few years to give them time to either sell or take that advice and get a solution sorted. The banks will listen; they're obliged to. So do not panic. Do talk to somebody. Take advice, but communication is the key. You must tell the bank what you're doing. Don't bury your head in the sand. Um, and we can do that for you. We can liaise on your behalf. We can talk to the bank and say, look, we're advising these people, hold off, but you must not stop making payments just because your mortgage term has ended. Does not absolve you from that responsibility. That will ruin your credit file, and it may close a few options that otherwise might be open. So, message is, don't panic, but do take advice.
Well, we've had some reaction. Good to see you all. Nice to see and hear Bob with his wise words and calm manner. So you make finance so much more pleasant, apparently.
That must be the wife, yeah.
Yes, the wife's been in touch. You would expect me to add, I think this is Guy, isn't it? You would expect me to add, but the life tenancy option or equity release for those retired folks who have not been able to pay off their mortgage is also an increasing market, but ultimately good to have more choices at more mainstream rates. So it's good to see these niche products coming into the mainstream, Guy is saying, I think. Is that probably fair?
It is. I've qualified in equity release, so we're able to advise now on the whole suite of products. So, we're doing a fairly large case now. Joe mentioned, interestingly, cultural issues. And in the Asian community, we don't like these products or because they've not been explained as well. But once they're understood, they are no different to a regular mortgage. Um,
Mm.
you're not selling the house as in the old reversionary schemes that used to happen. You used to sell your house and have a lifetime tenancy, and the company sold the house. But with a standard equity release mortgage, the house stays in your name, and there's a no negative equity guarantee. So they are not the old schemes. They are pretty much mainstream. The rates are pretty okay as well, sub 4%, not bad. Uh, and flexible. You can overpay, stop paying, not pay, take lump sums. Very, very good products.
Okay, let's move
Yeah, I
on to
think
what's running. Oh, sorry, Joe. Far
yeah,
away.
I'm just saying that I think that the important thing there, the message, the reason I say the communities is that I think a lot of people are sitting nervously, Bob, at this point, sort of thinking, well, what do I do? The problem we have, and some of the things that sort of come forward to me is that they feel that they have to maybe sell to their children or do something internally um, and what the good thing about the equity release situation is that it leaves the parents or the people that have had that property perfectly in charge of their destination. And I think that the point I was trying to make is in terms of it not being aware is that that needs to be educated that they don't need to be fearful of what could happen. And I've certainly seen people where they've come in and not understood that and said to me, look, I think I need to maybe either add a child or give it to a child or do something else so that I can continue to stay there and it can remain our family home. I think the good thing about the equity release is that it does leave you in charge, and I think that's something that you should take advice on and not be shy in coming forward. And of course, we're all here to assist and guide you and help you with that. Bob's here as a mortgage advisor to do that, and certainly I'm here to try and steer you. And if it means that that's the right route, then that's the right route. So don't fear, Bob says. Don't put your head in the sand and think this is all going to cause a problem. There are solutions available, and pretty sound solutions available for everybody and everyone's circumstances. That is out there, and that's the good thing about the FCA. They do make sure that people aren't bulldozed and bullied out of the circumstances by financial lenders and so forth. They get it into it. They're big boys. They lend money. They've got a security. And we talk about property on this Property Matters program week in, week out. Why do we do that? Because property is the safest, and even those lenders know that this is the safest investment that they've lent on. So I don't think that you should ever think about that. But we're here. Obviously, raise the questions of anything that you have, we're really pleased to know that we have the facilities and the experts that come along to give us the right guidance and advice. And thanks for joining us on that webinar, Bob.
Indeed. Final story of the week, because we must move on. Time is against us, but this is an interesting one. We were talking about whether it was the right time to get into buy-to-let at the beginning of the programme. But there's a suggestion, actually, that we could increase our rental income, not by being in buy-to-let, but going into the holiday lets market. So landlords could increase their rental income by a massive 21% by targeting a short-term holiday let market over the traditional rental market. This is a research by Revolution Brokers. In England, the average monthly rent is now £943 per month, but the average for a holiday let is £1,137, a premium of 21%. Not surprisingly, Cornwall, the most popular destination for this. Holiday let premium 35% in Devon and Cornwall, followed by the East Midlands at 30%, North East at 24%, and the West Midlands at 24%. And they're saying that the rise of Airbnb, now it's no longer the practice of people to go immediately to find a hotel in those areas. They look for an Airbnb, and of course, there are certain rules to letting out property as a holiday let, and certain amounts of days per year that you have to do it, of course. But if you get that right, there could be a premium there. What's your view, Bob?
Yeah, I mean, it's been on the rise for many, many months, and the biggest attraction is the treatment of interest, because holiday lets are seen as a business, whereas buy-to-lets are not. So it is attractive from that point of view. So everybody should consider a holiday buy-to-let in their portfolio, ideally freehold, because some leases don't allow subletting and short-term lets. So you've really got to be careful when you're buying a flat in any location like that, and make sure the lease allows subletting. But freehold property is absolutely fine, and the returns can be good, obviously. And there are specialist products for the holiday let market. But some people think they can buy holiday let anywhere. No, that's not the case. It has to be in a place of where people would actually go to spend some time away from the big cities. So if you're buying in Wales or Cornwall, which is obviously quite popular, then it's those sort of locations that lenders are willing to consider. And because the assessment is done in a particular, or the calculation is done in a in a different way, you can often quite easily still achieve 75% lending on these things. And if you buy in a company name, that's even more better. So we've got the lenders, to handle pretty much any scenario for a holiday let purchase. But yeah, maybe not your first time. Do get experience in the buy-to-let market first, but consider it. Consider it, because there is a demand.
Are you suggesting by that, Bob, that it's actually a bit trickier to run a holiday let as a kind of buy-to-let type of project rather than a traditional buy-to-let?
It could be because of the distance involved. Because if you're letting people in who you've never seen before, who lets them in, who lets them out, who does the cleaning, so that it's a bit more hotelish, a bit more labor intensive in terms of maintaining that particular property. Because yes, you can take a deposit and things like that and make sure they don't damage anything. You may need a managing agent on hand, so that would eat into the margin slightly. So I think you've just got to do your sums and see how it would work in practice. Theory is one side, practicality is another.
Yeah, they're called furnished holiday lettings, aren't they, Joe? And you have a number to get all of the benefits from the tax office, for example. You have to have a number of days of occupancy during the year, and there's a number of hoops to jump through, so it can be tricky, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, it's attractive, and it's attractive in certain areas and regions. There's no doubt about it. But as Bob says, you've got to check the leases. Some places, especially even in London, a lot of the leases actually don't allow, the management companies don't allow sort of Airbnb situations, primarily because the other people that live in those blocks or live in those properties just don't want not knowing the people that come in and out. And it can cause a lot of problems, especially if you've managed to get a short-term Airbnb let to someone who's decided, even though they say you can't go and have a party, but decided to have 5 or 6 people over that night and had a shindig. It just creates problems. So that is what puts the mockers on the Airbnb model for certain types of property, but freehold, yes. And of course, the main thing is they have to be in an area that you want, that there is going to be a demand. But rightly so, your practical advice is that, take it in an area where you can manage it. Managing is very important because, these people are in and out. It is more hotel, motel type of operation where you've got to need someone who's going to go in and clean after them, change the bedding, do all the stuff, and then make sure it's ready for the next person. But of course, it's the void periods that you've got to really take into consideration, because you might have done really well in, perhaps our June, July, August types of period, but then come December, September, or October, you might find that, it's lying empty and not doing anything. So you really got to balance the income against the shortfall and the void periods. But yeah, it's demanding, it's coming up, it's showing that, especially in those remote areas, primarily because you're not always going to get the best. So, I've known of properties, but perhaps in certain parts of the country where they say, oh, well, actually, I'm only paying £500 a month, £300 a month, £600 a month for rental. And you might find that you actually get £500-600 a week on an Airbnb, and that makes good sense because it's there. But remember the void period, and of course making sure that the numbers do work out. They always sound attractive, but there's always a catch, isn't there? There's no such thing as a free lunch. Someone somewhere is going to have to pay out for it somehow. So it's just a case of weighing up what works for you.
Yeah, the accommodation has to be let or available for let for 210 days of the year, and you've got to let it for at least 105 days of the year. And actually, there's a rather crafty way that you're able to aggregate. So if you've got more than one property, there's an example that the government gives here on their advice. Emma's got 4 UK holidays in 2019 and 2020. She let the first one for 120 days, the second one for 125 days, the third one for 112, and the fourth one for 64. Now, 2 of those clearly didn't make it, but because in total the 4 actually averaged out the right figure per property, that's actually okay. So there's a few ways around it, I guess, but you've got to know what you're doing, haven't you, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, there's just the knowledge of doing that, and then because that's what you're doing, you're always becoming your own managing agent for making sure that the occupancy is the correct amount in order to justify A, the income, and B, the tax benefits that you're going to get by doing it on those periods. Of course, you need to take the appropriate tax advice from your accountants and your tax advisors, but fundamentally, you do spend time managing a situation that's going to give you the best returns.
And Bob, one of the things that's come out of this conversation today is it's wise to get sensible advice. Now, does that advice, how does that work, generally speaking, for the sort of things we've been talking about today? I mean, do you have to pay up front for advice, or does the payment come to people like yourself through the fees that you get from selling the products? How does it work?
Okay, we don't charge for informal advice at all. We're happy to spend 10-15 minutes with anyone and guide them generally. If they instruct us, then we would arrange the mortgage, for which there is a fee. We also get a bit from the lender as well to sort of top that up to cover our costs. But if anybody just wants a general chat with it, there's no fee for that at all. So we're quite good like that. And if there is a broker fee, we don't charge it until the job is done. So you're not losing or risking money with a broker and not being guaranteed a service or a product at the end of it. We only take the money once the job is done. But more important than that is the tax advice in what sort of capacity do you buy that property? Is it as a limited company, a sole trader, as a partnership with your spouse or a business partner, how do you buy it? You've really got to take advice around that for the best tax efficiency for your circumstances. Now, and then you've got to think about where to buy, because if you, as this market has exploded over the last, especially since the pandemic, if you then buy in an area which is heavily competitive, then your rents may not remain as high as they have done so far. Because if everybody buys holiday lets in Cornwall, then you're going to be one of 10,000 people trying to let out their cottage. So how can you make it stand out? So either your property's got to be absolutely spot on with a sea view or something like that, or you've got to price competitively. So, but the biggest benefit is, yes, you can go and live there yourself as well. So, if you if you fancy a break, it's something that you've got. You haven't got to book anything. It's yours to stay there as well and enjoy it. So, it's, I think, the third or fourth tier in your investment journey. You might have a few single buy-to-lets, then you might graduate to a HMO. You might then do a multi-unit block, maybe experiment with a bit of semi-commercial property, and then the holiday lets.
It's down the priority ladder.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, also the fact is, as the Daily Mail or Mail Online have put this weekend, second homeowners face Airbnb ban as Michael Gove plans crackdown on holiday lettings to protect tenants living tourist hotspots. So it looks like the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill will try and outlaw this in certain regions. And the certain regions they're talking about, I believe, are... Well, these are the councils that are thinking of banning second homes. So if you're buying in Salcombe, St Ives, Tideswell, I hope that's pronounced right, Whitby and Whitstable, they'll all ban you from buying a second home. If you're buying a home there, you're going to have to live in it. And just for the sake of fullness and completion, this is the... when I can find it, hang on, there we are. No, this is it here. These are the most sought-after hotspots in the UK if you're buying a holiday let. So top of the list, not surprisingly, Salcombe, then Falmouth, North Berwick, St Ives. So yeah, lots of Cornwall there. Look, Bournemouth on the south coast, Whitstable in Yorkshire, Whitby, Weymouth. So yeah, pretty much all, as you'd expect, coastal towns, but scattered pretty much around Cornwall mostly, and the east coast by the look of it. So it looks as if Mr. Gove's going to try and rain on everyone's parade, Joe.
Yeah, but he likes to do that. I think he doesn't have a portfolio himself, so he just thinks that he can make life miserable for ordinary folk, especially in his levelling up new role that he's trying to do everywhere. But look, at the end of the day, we understand why councils and people want to do that. It's probably because they're going to get a seasonal bunch of people going in there, and then all of a sudden it'll be dead, and other people can't actually get on the ladder and buy. So there's some logical and reasonable reasons for it, I understand, but it doesn't mean that people can't actually invest in those. And as Bob says earlier on, it's also a place for you to stay when you want to take that break and choose to go and enjoy that space as well. So I think it's about the communities, but it's, what really comes back to me all the time here is that look how important property is. I mean, in every shape or form, there is a role to play for property in our lives from start to finish, from first-time buyers to investments to Airbnb to buy-to-let, and we haven't even started development and building our own and all that kind of stuff there. It's just huge. It's what it's why our program exists week in, week out, because it's a subject that is on everyone's lips, that property is the right way to go. And so I think Gove is just trying to clip our wings by saying, oh, he'll do this and he'll do that. But if he can come up with another form of investment, maybe people will start to look at other things. But until that happens, I think it's always going to be property.
Lovely. Bob, thank you so much for your wisdom as always, and delivered in such a calm, gentle manner, which is the perfect way to do it on a Sunday morning at this time. So thank you for your wisdom as always. Joe, thank you for you, and I hope you've enjoyed watching our Property Matters show this week. And don't forget, the podcast will be live from 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. You can take it with you wherever you go. We'll see you again next week.